All right, cool. All right, I'll get started then. Hi guys, my name is Maria Palomino. I am a third year here at East Bay, and our focus for this group was standardized test scores and Hayward Unified School District. Garrett and Malika, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, I'm Garrett. I'm a third year as well. Math major, physics minor, and Malika.
Hi guys, my name's Malika and I'm a second year student and my major is computer science.
And that's my cue. A little bit of background on our subject. Here in California, we give standardized tests to millions of students every year. The CDE actually gives out the SBSA, the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment, and they use this as like a scaler to kind of judge how ready students are for college and careers, and how to improve teaching and learning in the classroom. Dr. Rivera actually had a conversation with some leaders at the Hayward Promise Neighborhood Grant, and they wanted us to analyze the standardized test scores in Hayward. Lucky for us, the data was free from the CDE. So. A little bit about the data. It'll all be presented in box plot form. I'm sure most of you are aware of this or familiar with this, but a few key points. As you can see on the left, there's a minimum and a maximum. Then the interquartile range contains 50% of the data, as well as the median. And then, yeah, that's about it. I'll hand it over to Maria.
Thank you, Garrett. So I'm going to be talking about the Bay Area. So we're going to be looking at all 9 Bay Area counties, but for conciseness for this presentation, we're going to be looking at 4 throughout the next slides. One of the metrics that we wanted to observe for the test scores, we were wondering, okay, well, does median household income in the Bay Area affect the student's performance? And so here on the left of this slide, I have a graph and it's a bar chart. On the left of the y-axis, it's the household income. It increments by 20,000, and on the x-axis, I have each of the counties. Evidently, right, you can see that Santa Clara leads with the highest median household income, so at 116,000. We also have San Mateo, which leads second in highest median household income, which is 113,000, and Marin, which also leads at $110,000. And also, I do want to point out that Solano and Sonoma have the least median household income, which I'll also display like their median household incomes in the next slide. But the question, right, is, does median household income have an impact on students' test scores? So before I show you guys the box plots, we did base this off of different demographics given to us from the data sheets from the California Department of Education. So accordingly, AA is for African American or Black, AS for Asian or Pacific Islander, HI for Hispanic or Latinx, and SWD for students with disabilities, and WH for white. So how do they compare, right? So I'm gonna separate them from math and English. One of the things I do want to point out, let me just go through this real quick, is that on the y-axis, we do want to pay attention to that, right? Since 0 is the target score. So if the box or the orange line is below 0, that means that the standard was not met. And if it's above, that means that the standard was met, meaning that they passed like a certain standard for the test scores. So out of the 9, I chose 4. I chose 2 of the highest with the 2 counties with the highest median household income and 2 counties with the smallest. So we're gonna look at the first 4, which have the highest, right? We do notice that Asian and white students, if you look at their box plots respectively, they are above a 0, meaning that they did pass the standard. But their other peers, they did not. So there is a pattern. If you look at this, it follows like a sinusoidal pattern, and this also happens in San Mateo, which isn't a little too far from its median household income. And so even then, right, is money like a huge factor towards students' test scores? So I'm going to remove San Mateo and populate the Solano box plot. Again, it still shows that same sinusoidal pattern, right? And again, African American and Black, Hispanic or Latinx students and students with disabilities, they do fall below that 0 target line. So we also see that as well with Sonoma. So there really isn't that much of a difference besides like how long the boxes are. And we also see this trend with the other 5 Bay Area counties, which I don't have them displayed here. And I'll leave it to Garrett.
Thank you. Now taking it away from just the Bay Area in general, we wanted to look at Hayward and see if we can find a fair comparison. We don't want to go comparing Hayward to a school with no resources or infinite resources because that would be unfair. So what we did was we used 4 metrics to kind of find similar counties, and those 4 metrics: school funding, median household income, population size, and diversity profile. We kind of chose them because we knew that they had an impact and an opportunity in general. And so we wanted to apply these criteria to the classroom. After taking all the unified school districts and narrowing them down, we found that Banning Unified, Fresno Unified, San Lorenzo, and West Contra Costa were the most alike. So now taking a look at those 4 counties and seeing how they did in comparison to Hayward. As you can see from Hayward's performance, the standard on the left, the 0, generally everyone's kind of falling below, everyone except for the Asian and white students. And this is also following the trend that Maria was talking about, the kind of sinusoidal pattern. Next slide. Now, if we take a look at the other 4 slides, the Fresno, Banning, and West Contra Costa, and San Lorenzo, we can still see the same pattern. Few points, Banning Unified and Fresno are doing a little bit worse, West Contra Costa as well, but San Lorenzo is kind of getting up there. Now I'll hand it back to Maria.
All right, so we're going to be looking at the metrics that Hayward and all the other schools were measured from, right? So of course, we're going to start with median household income. So we have Hayward and San Lorenzo, West Contra Costa, and Fresno. So looking at this, right, this box chart, we have them, we have each little box thingy according to their demographic. So blue for African American or Black, and red for white. On the y-axis, we have the median household income, which still increments by 20,000. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is unstable. And then on the Fresno, one thing I do want to point out is that Fresno, despite having similar metrics, it's significantly lower compared to the other median household incomes for the other districts. But even then, again, going back to the scores, there wasn't really a direct impact on the students' test scores. The next thing we wanted to look at was similar school spending. Again, respectively, each box chart has their own demographic. On the y-axis is the percent. This is all the spending is based on the average day of attendance. And again, they're all pretty similar. And so even then, like looking back at the test scores, there really wasn't an impact on them. And finally, we have similar population size. So how does Hayward compare in terms of similar population size, right? So here we kind of didn't look at like the other comparable Hayward districts, but we found one that had like a longer range all across California. And so here we have the means and in blue and the population in thousands. And looking at this again, right? Even though these districts had similar population, there really wasn't an impact on the students' test scores as well. So similar population size, median household income, and similar school spending was that they didn't really have a direct impact.
So we saw that comparing to similar districts, like Maria was talking about, we didn't find any impact or any kind of correlation. So what we did was we wanted to generalize to all of California and take the huge data set and kind of with each metric compare its correlation to student performance. And to measure the strength of that relationship, we use that long-winded word there, the Pearson's correlation coefficient formula, where R is measured between 1 and -1. When R is 1, it has a perfect positive relationship, meaning that as both as one increases, the other also increases, and -1 meaning as one increases, one decreases. And what we actually found when we implemented this into the code was that household income had near 1, spending had about a 0.5, as well as population size, and diversity profile had about a 0. And what this translates to is, as you can see, is diversity has a weak or a negligible correlation with test scores, population size and school spending have about a moderate, and median household income had a strong or near perfect correlation with student performance. And we also wanted to point out the interconnectedness of all these metrics, as important as it is to separate them and compare them to student performance and see how they correlate. These are really interconnected. For instance, household income tax determines how school spending is brought about, and this kind of victimizes groups like African American and Hispanic students and students with disabilities. And then I'll hand it over to Malika.
So why tests? Where it all begins. So standardized tests weren't always used to measure student learning. And because of a large increase of population from 1820 to 1860, standardized tests became more popular as soon as school systems became more complex. And I have a quote that says, in the colonial period, school supervisors administered oral examinations to verify that children were learning the prescribed material. As school systems grew in size and complexity, the design, purposes, and administration of the achievement testing involved in an effort to meet new demands. So before the Civil War, schools were like externally mandated written examinations to assess student progress to see where they lack and what they know. Universal education. So as population increased rapidly, the US shifted from schooling via private tutors and private schools to a free universal primary education. And it was seen as an attempt to have fairness and equal opportunity for those in the US. So standardized testing was created to reach some sort of fairness level, despite the fact that each student grasps to different ideas and concepts differently and obtains information in different ways. So factors such as income, location, and race can play a big role in these results. So pros and cons of standardized tests. So pros of standardized tests is that it can track progress on a larger scale, and it can help pinpoint and target the areas and subjects we need to focus or improve on. And overall, it creates a standard for learning. And cons would be that scores can impact mental health and confidence. They don't really determine a student's success, talent, or abilities. And it's not really accurate because everyone learns information differently. And one question I want to ask everyone is that, what are your thoughts and feelings towards standardized tests in the US? So you guys can put your answer in the chat box and we can go over it later. So next slide, please. So should standardized tests continue in our education system? So since we have no other ways of measuring or collecting data on student learning, testing is, well, the most well-established scalable option, but we should consider whether or not it's best or not. So between kindergarten and grade 12, we take an average of 112 standardized tests. This means that for each of the tests taken, teachers put their curriculum aside for test preparation, which sometimes can take weeks or even months. standardized tests are used to set a standard that may be unrealistic to students. And keeping in mind, every student learns really differently, and it can cause problems when there is one set standard. In this era, there has been a set standard to which one student needs to achieve, but not everyone has access to the same tools to get to that level to establish in that period of time. Tests don't really teach anything, teachers do. So possible area for further research. So expanding inspection from Bay Area to all of California. So what regions of California show students from all demographic groups meeting or exceeding the goal scores? And another one would be examining exams more closely. So do standardized test scores reflect student content knowledge, or are they indicators of in attendance or funding? And how does this change in other subjects? So on the right, I have a graph that shows students enrolled by subject. And on the bottom are like different counties in the Bay Area, and the different colors represent obviously the subjects. And it shows how many like students are enrolled in what subject. So thank you guys for listening, and if anyone has any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you very much. Yes, so now we're happy to take any questions. So maybe I'll start it off. I actually had a question. So you asked you asked the audience for their feelings on standardized tests in general, but the three of you are probably closer to high school and taking those tests than maybe many of us in the audience. So what are your thoughts on, what's your experience of taking these standardized tests?
I guess I can go first. I never really minded. I'm kind of a nerd though, so I guess I don't speak for everyone, but I love taking tests and I love finding out how well my progress was going. But I know that like my little brother, he has the worst exam anxiety. He'll stress out for the next week or so after an exam. So I know that it doesn't affect everyone the same.
I was gonna chime in. I thought standardized test scores weren't the best because I loved math. I liked doing it in high school, but I still felt like maybe like what I was learning wasn't correlating with what was shown to us on the test. So I felt like I couldn't demonstrate like to the best of my ability. Because I know we had like that whole Common Core stuff as well, and I was in that weird transition from Common Core from like that traditional math. So it was just, I don't know, my experience was like a little different, but yeah, I get a lot of test anxiety with it too.
I agree with Maria, like the test anxiety is super real. And I know for my school that we would have set goals, like if we reach a certain standard, we would have like a pizza party or like something else. So I do feel like there is pressure there because it's like everybody wants to try their best to like achieve something.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those thoughts. I see a hand up from Jose.
Hi, this might be a little off topic, but does do other countries that do really well in education, like I don't know, Japan or Israel, Switzerland, do they do standardized testing? And does the state ever ask those countries like to advise us on like how to improve in math or English, etc.?
That's actually a really good point. Like, I wish that there was more like conversation about whether like what are some better ways to do these standardized tests, because ultimately they're not always the right thing to measure a student's ability, even though that's all we have. But then, yeah, again, like countries like Japan and the others, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure they do standardized tests, but it would be really interesting to know like how they could like, if they could talk to those other countries and see if they can better upon those.
And then I see Dr. Maruzzi's hand up.
Yeah, so then first with the standardized testing, I remember that it always came with everyone got breakfast at school and it was like a half day of school. So then like we were like 8 to 12 and we were done and we were out and we were free. So then at least for me, like I associate the standardized test with the free breakfast and half day of school. But let's see, like a question, you all said that, I think you said, if I was hearing it right, that you said that there was a strong correlation between median income, I think, and median income and what was it, I think performance, if that is right. Could you elaborate on that a little more? And then an observation that I had was that I think it was one of the charts that you were showing that the median income for whites and Hispanics were like the same. I think it was on a chart that you had, but then their performance on the tests were different, like if I remember the box plots. But yeah, could you elaborate on that a little more?
I think I can answer the first question with the correlation with student performance and median household income. What we did was we got data from the CDE for student performance, and then we compiled it to specific counties. So we separated out to specific counties and then found some data from, I think it was the datacensus.gov, and that had median household income for every thing you ever need, apparently. And but yeah, we used the county data and we found the covariance and then plugged it into a Python program that gave us the correlation coefficient and used that formula. And that was for the whole Bay Area. I think the chart that you were talking about on the second question was, or that was for all of California. And I think the chart that you were talking about was for specifically the Bay Area. I'm not sure, but maybe somebody else can answer the second question.
Yeah, going back to like correlation, I don't know, like I did also see that as well with the like the income and like the Asian and white students, it was like different. But like I think going back to like, I don't know, I'm just gonna go back to what I remember from stats, but like I don't know, like correlation isn't causation. So like even then, like even though like they're not like it looks like they have like an effect on them, they're really, it doesn't imply that it caused it, you know? So then again, right, it has a strong correlation, and it's definitely something that we could, you know, look at a glance. But then, yeah, given again to the data, the data sets that were given to us, they were like a little old too.
Yeah, because then when I saw, I think it was, I think you're right there, York. It was the one that was for the Bay Area, and it was like you had like the box plots up for like the different counties, and then it was like the Asian population and white population were always outperforming other populations. And then when you looked at the median income, it was like the median income for Hispanics was like similar or at least comparable to whites. I think it was on that chart. So then it was raising a question for me on that, like, why were they outperforming if they had similar, like, I mean, similar median income, I guess, right? But thank you.
And I think, so Jose, you've had your hand up, but I'm not sure if you have another question or if that was an old hand.
Sorry, yeah, that's an old one. Yeah.
Okay, old hand. So then there's a new hand from Dr. Glass.
I'll be quick, and I think we have to move on. But I was just wondering whether, especially for those of you who feel like those tests were anxiety provoking and maybe didn't reflect what you actually know. I think that standardized tests are sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because at the university, if we evaluate student learning through high stakes testing, then high stakes testing is going to measure the ability of students to take high stakes tests. So I don't think we have time for the conversation here, but I would love to hear people's ideas about alternatives, not only in terms of getting out of high school into the university, but for us in our mathematics classrooms, of ways that you would love to be able to show faculty and each other what you know, like something like this. So what could we do differently that would give you guys the opportunity to really show and shine?
I can go first. I was going to say, actually doing something like this is really rewarding with math. Like, this is using math is the most rewarding thing with math. Like, actually applying it, that's the most rewarding feeling. But I also see the value in, you know, giving the same test to every student in the class, because we all need to learn the math. So it's a difficult question, but maybe if a student can opt out or something and do a project like this and do research instead of exams, that would be okay. But it's also difficult. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because then you have to cater to everyone's needs. So that's a gray question.
I feel like instead of making one universal standard, like a test could be used to find like skills, and maybe like after doing whatever test, you can like improve on your skills rather than like creating a set standard.
I was gonna say, yeah, just like being more adaptable to students' needs. And I don't know, I feel like especially the environment, like, you know, staying in like one whole room, and I don't know, it gets overwhelming too, because I know we did ours on the computer, and I mean, like, you know, just seeing all that, I feel like there's just still like a lot of pressure. But yeah, like projects, like I think that's really cool, because you're demonstrating your, like you're just demonstrating those skills that you learned in math into like real world stuff. And I feel like that's what matters, you know? So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So maybe we can give one last round of applause to our speakers for today. I think they did all a wonderful job. Yay. Yes. So I was very happy and honored to work with all of them. I think they're all wonderful people, and I will write all of you wonderful letters of recommendation if you ever need them, and ask me for them. So keep that in mind. And so thank you everybody for coming. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.